Hello everyone on Women Dialogues, and I'm your host Shashi with all of you again to create more voice for women and by women. Today's our guest joining us from Canada, Miss Pamela Thompson, and her name is enough into talking about leadership and coaching and a lot of work. So she is a consultant globally. So we will talk in detail with her all about her work, about her international experiences and all in detail. So let's start. So welcome Pamela on this platform.
Thank you so much, Shashi. I really appreciate the opportunity to be on your show.
Thank you. It is a great pleasure to have you on this platform, Pamela. We are really excited to hear your experiences, your work, and you have done a lot of work. So we are looking forward to hear those stories and experiences. So before we start, let's start talking about first your place where you are living in Canada. Tell us a bit more about our audience and those are listening and watching us. Uh, what it is like to be and what it is. We all know, but it's always good to hear from the person who is living and getting experience through their angle. Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you, Shashi. Yes, I live on Vancouver Island in the city of Victoria. Yeah, the beautiful city of Victoria. So I live about 10 minutes walk from the ocean and 10 minutes walk from what's called the Inner Harbor, where the Empress Hotel, it was started as a British colony, right? So there's a
Yeah.
big, there's some, it's, so there's Victorian houses that are still here. And then there's a beautiful Beacon Hill Park about 10 minutes walk from where I live as well, that was built in the 1800s. So it has many beautiful flowers. And we're fortunate in Victoria to be the warmest place in Canada. So we rarely get snow. We got one dump a few weeks ago, which was like 40 centimeters in like 2 days, which was crazy, but it melted quite quickly. But normally we don't get snow here. We get some
Mm-hmm.
rain, but not so
Mm-hmm.
much snow. And so it's a
Mm-hmm.
very mild climate because we're surrounded by water, right? So
Yeah.
it is a very lovely place. I feel very blessed to live here. And we got here about 4 years ago because my husband was headhunted. Would you believe it, off LinkedIn? We never thought
Mm-hmm.
we would end up here. We didn't have great plans, but it all worked out. So I'm glad we're here now. We're both glad.
Thank you. And it sounds so much interesting and hearing this beautiful about this beautiful place in a beautiful way. It is bringing us more interest. Maybe our audience and I myself, maybe we'll look and explore this beautiful part of the world, definitely in the coming future. But when we are coming on your life journey and your experiences, and as you are very famous leadership coach and consultant globally, so let us start knowing about your leadership journey and your early life experiences, how those shaped you the way you are today.
Well, thank you, Shashi. It's interesting, how we can have dreams from a very young age. I
Yeah.
recall being at friends of my parents when I was like 3, maybe 4 the most. And this woman, she was single and she was a university professor and she traveled a lot. And I remember being at her place and she was showing us slides of her recent travels. I can't remember from where, but I remember looking around her house and seeing all these beautiful treasures that she'd collected from all over the world. And I said to myself, you know what? I am going to travel around the world. I'm going to collect treasures as well. As a kid, you think this way, right? And it's
Yeah.
very interesting because by the time I was 30, I traveled around the world. And up to this point in my life, I've had the opportunity to live and work on 5 continents. So it just
Wow.
shows you the power. I've always been fascinated by people from all different countries and cultures, and wondering, why do they do that? Isn't that interesting? I'm curious
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, and I think that totally makes sense the way you explain about your, childhood experiences and observing those, tiny bits here and there, and getting into yourself in that way, developing yourself. It is really fascinating, and I believe the way we see and we dream, we have capability and to forward ourselves to achieve those dreams. So when we are talking about your this international consulting work and your as you mentioned, you have worked in 5 continents, which is itself, I believe you have must be having lot of tons of stories and experiences to share. But how did you get started in international consulting work and all?
Well, that's a good question, Shashi. I I've always loved international work, and I wanted to do it sooner rather than later. But my when I was younger, my and I have 2 children. As I'm blessed with a son and a daughter. And anyway, when they were young, I felt it was important for them to have roots. So we did go and live in Colombia in South America when they were 3.5 and 5.5. We lived in this little village in the mountains, and I lived there myself for 12 months, right? However, and this enabled me to learn Spanish. So that was amazing to be able to learn Spanish. And then I volunteered for a peasant farmer nonprofit. And I did health education in several schools, one in a little schoolhouse up in the mountains and one in close to a poor barrio from where, about half an hour from where we lived. So that kind of
Yeah.
started the journey of tipping my toe in. But the rest of the time, my husband was an international consultant, and
Wow.
he was traveling all around the world, right? And I thought, oh, I need to wait until the kids are of a certain age before I really do it. So I would do small consultancies. I was a member of the Canadian Public Health Association. I'm a health
Mhm.
sector specialist, and other
Mhm.
groups like that. And so they would, I would get small consultancies, but I really wanted to do bigger things. Anyway, when my son was 17, he's the youngest of my 2 children, I decided, okay, I can start maybe traveling because he's almost finished high school. And
Yeah.
so I talked to friends of mine. Anyway, long and the short, I ended up finding out through a friend of mine, the vice president of an organization that managed and consulted on international development projects around the world in a variety of
Mhm.
sectors. So what
Mhm.
happened is through that woman, she linked me with the vice president. And at that time I lived in Ottawa, the capital of Canada.
Yeah.
And so I ended up going for an interview thinking I would maybe be put on their consultants roster. And lo and behold, there was another younger woman with her. And about 15 minutes into the interview, they said, this woman's going on maternity leave in a couple of months, and we're really looking for someone for at least 9 months to fill her position.
Mhm.
Anyway, and so they talked a little bit about that. And so anyway, the next day, long and short, anyway, the next day, the the president of the company left a message, and I ended up meeting him in a few days when he flew in from Calgary. And
Yeah.
I ended up dipping my toe in by working with them 2, 3 days a week for 3 months, and then ending up going full time. And that was the opportunity to work on big projects and manage them. So I
Mhm.
managed an HIV/AIDS surveillance project in Pakistan, where we built the
Mhm.
surveillance system for HIV/AIDS from the ground up. They had no
Mhm.
systematic way to collect data and understand the stage of the epidemic so they could prevent
Right.
its spread, right? So that was a
Mhm.
really interesting project. And I had an office with 14 staff in Islamabad and one in each provincial AIDS control program. So I had
Yeah.
a field manager in the field. That was their model. And I was in Canada, but I would go every 4 to 6 weeks to build capacity and to monitor. And it was
Mhm.
really interesting. And then from there, I ended up helping design a primary healthcare project in Nigeria, which is really healthcare on the ground, meeting the needs of communities.
Yeah.
And that was a really interesting opportunity because I actually led the design team to create the design for this 5-year, $20 million project.
Yeah.
So that, I was on the front end of that. So lots of lessons through that. And also,
Mhm.
I ended up, after, I'll tell you something later, but the international work, I also started to coach, and I'll just say a blip there. I ended up being
Mhm.
certified as a life and business coach, and I thought, okay, I'll start
Mhm.
doing that so I don't have to travel so much. But within 18 months, I was really missing the international work, right? And if I may, I'll share a little story. So I was
Yeah.
like, I was taking this body-centered coaching program. I'm
Mhm.
certified as a business and life coach, but I really started to get in touch with my intuition and thought,
Yeah.
the power of the mind-body connection. And I'm
Mhm.
like, okay. And so I chose it was the
Mhm.
last class in this body centered coaching program that was
Mhm.
delivered by a teleseminar at the time. And the
Mhm.
instructor was asking for a volunteer. So I said, well, nobody else was putting up their hands. So I said, I would do it. So she said, it was a decision-making process. And she said, Shashi, she said,
Mm-hmm.
find a line on the floor. And she
Mm-hmm.
said, think about something that you really, really want.
Mm-hmm.
Now imagine you have a knapsack on your back and
Mm-hmm.
notice any fears or doubts or, anxiety that comes up for you. And
Yeah.
imagine each of those negative emotions as
Mm-hmm.
rocks in your knapsack on your back. Just
Yeah.
feel that, notice that, and now release them all. Now
Mm-hmm.
cross that line however you wish. Walk across it, leap across it, whatever, and say aloud what you want. So I leapt across the line and I said, I want to play big.
Yeah.
Would you
Yeah.
believe it?
That's
Joshie,
that sounds interesting. The way as you explained about bringing your international experiences, working in different continents in different places, and working especially on those health projects and all, and slowly, gradually bringing those dots and those experiences into your finding your own passion and journey to be the way you are today. But when we are talking about this, your international consultancy and these experiences, I just would like to ask, uh, maybe many of our audiences would be interested to know if they would like to see in this field how this journey look like. Is it like there's a being a female, do is it challenging, or if it is challenging, what kind of challenges you had and how you overcome those?
it's a really good question, Joshie. I obviously, you face challenges in anything you do often, and that's how you learn and grow. I've
Yeah.
been very fortunate. I feel like I haven't had too many. I will preface what I say with that. I, as a woman, particularly I've worked in a number of Muslim countries. I've worked in Pakistan, Nigeria, Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm.
Afghanistan for 13 months. I lived in Kabul. And
Mm-hmm.
I've been the boss of Muslim band and being, on teams with Muslim band and in a senior position. And what I found is it wasn't an issue. And people would say, well, do you change your behavior when you work with Muslim men, for example? I said, no, I totally am myself. And I
Mm-hmm.
think what I know to be true is that when we come from our heart and we see
Mm-hmm.
each other as the same as people and we value and respect them, right? That
Yeah.
you don't typically have issues.
Right.
So that, just to say that, and yet I've been in situations where I've noticed other women who are Muslim and they are totally different in a group of women in a planning session than when you add the men dimension. And I realize that's because that's the way they've been socialized and how they've learned to survive in the culture, right? Initially, I was
Mm-hmm.
totally shocked when that happened. I thought, is this woman schizophrenic? Because she was so assertive in a group of women. And then I saw her in a mixed company at a workshop, and she was very demure and sharp. She said anything. I'm like, whoa, is that the same person? But then I really thought about it, and I realized, whoa, yeah. So we have to be sensitive to people. That said, there was one time a challenge I faced with one of my field managers who was
Mm-hmm.
a very intelligent Muslim man with a PhD. And I was giving him his performance appraisal. And it was on, different items were rated on a scale from 1 to 10. And I gave him threes on a couple of the items, one being
Mm-hmm.
communication.
Right.
Well, he came to my office and he sat there for 3 to 4 hours and he tried to get me to change his ratings because he said, oh, I thought you were my friend, Pam. It's like, I thought you were my friend. How come you're giving me threes? Like, because he wanted to get fives on everything. And it was very interesting, this like tension between, did I rate him wrong? And, it made me question, right? And so as
Yeah.
women, sometimes, you have it, we need to stand in our power in a good way. However,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes things like that, episodes or incidents like that can make us really question, are we
Mm-hmm.
doing the right thing? Are we really correct? So yes, so I
Yeah.
urge women to really center and ground themselves. I teach my clients grounding exercises because before I
Mm-hmm.
go into like even an interview like this or a meeting, an important meeting with people, it's really important to do that. So you don't wave in the breeze. You just really are solid when you're
Yeah.
making decisions and interacting with others,
Right.
right? So
Yeah.
yeah, so that, and I mean, another challenge is obviously the jet lag. Like
Mm-hmm.
when I was living in Ottawa initially, and then Calgary when I was doing a lot of the work with the consulting group that was doing
Yeah.
international health and development projects.
Yeah.
And so, I would have 10 and 12-hour time differences. And
Yeah.
Shashi, you've traveled a lot, right? So that was a
Yeah.
big deal. So, you get in at 6 in the morning, and I don't sleep on planes. So I'd have traveled for, 18, 20 some hours. And anyway, a long time, and then 2 nights without sleep. And so what I did in
Mhm.
that case is I rarely would schedule a meeting. I'd try to arrive on a Sunday morning. So then I would
Yeah.
sleep when I got there. And then I'd meet
Right.
with my field manager at like 4 in the afternoon, but I wouldn't really start my real intense work until the Monday, because
Mm.
otherwise I just felt like a truck had ran over me if I, got off the
Right.
plane, washed my face and went to a meeting, right? I just started it.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, it's very natural. I think it's obvious with everyone, because having different time zone and same time all together, this long hour journey, it makes us all totally jet lagged, and getting into the same time zone system, like when you feel like sleepy, where is full sunshine, so it takes time.
It does. It does.
When he was explaining, it was bringing my own experience and memory. I can totally relate that. But where here you bring a lot of very essential and very good learning points for the, especially the female who are looking for these international work and experiences, how they can manage those all points. But a part of that, you was mentioning about these some grounded these practices and all, and it reminded me about your bestseller book, which you published. And I want to talk, but I just want to listen from you, because it's always pleasure to listen from author about the book. So your book is Learning to Dance with Life, a guide for high achieving women. So tell us about your this best-selling book.
Well, thanks for the opportunity, Shashi. Yes, that book came from me almost burning out. I had worked in Afghanistan for 13 months with the Ministry of Public Health, and I ended up, uh, after that 13 months of working intensively, and it was high level, I helped them develop their first strategic plan and built the
Yeah.
capacity of internal teams to do strategic and
Mhm.
operational planning. But anyway, I came home and I thought I was going to take a break. And this is like November of 2011. And then within a very short space of time, I got a call from a VP of a not-for-profit that promotes women's and children's rights around the world. And she
Mhm.
said, that they had this senior health advisor position. And would I be interested in it? And I thought about it, and I thought, I looked at their mission and their vision and their values, and I thought, I feel totally aligned with what they're doing. And I think this group would be really interesting to work with. But I said to myself, no. I said to myself, I have a company, so I'm going to do a contract. I'm not going to be an employee. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm not going to be anyway. So I threw my hat into the ring with that caveat, and I ended up doing that. Well, it was very intense, very intense. I was a senior technical advisor on 7 projects in Asia and Africa to reduce infant and maternal
Mhm.
mortality. So
Mhm.
anyway, the scope crept, as they say, and more was added to my plate, even though I said, look, I can't do it. And they said, there's no one else to. Anyway, the long and the short, they wanted me to renew after a year. And I
Mhm.
said, after some deliberation, I said no. And I turned it down, and I thanked them. And they said, why? And I said, because I want to create more balance in my life in 2013. And I had no
Mhm.
idea what that meant or what I was going to do, but I totally took some time. I would say about
Mhm.
6 months, 5 to 6 months, where I just totally stayed at home. I
Mhm.
started to study mindfulness, which you probably
Mhm.
know about, being from
Mhm.
India,
Yeah.
looking at, how can you be present in your body and learn, to be
Yeah.
grounded. So I
Yeah.
studied mindfulness. I started to meditate every day, and I slept. I slept like 10, 12, 13 hours a day, and I reconnected with family and friends. And at that point, I was living in the interior of BC in the Okanagan, beautiful place. So again,
Mhm.
lovely place to be in nature. And then about 5 months in, I listened to this transformational author experience
Mhm.
online.
Mhm.
And it was
Mhm.
like all the pieces of my life came together. And the 7 keys to what I call creative living from my book came to me. And they
Yeah.
are 7 keys to consciously cultivating improved health,
Mhm.
happiness,
Mhm.
fulfillment, and inner peace in your life. And so in that book, it's backed up not only from my own journey, but in-depth interviews with women from 3 continents, and
Mm-hmm.
also underpinned by evidence. You would like this because being an academic, Shashi, from neuroscience, the health promoting healing benefits of the arts, Eastern psychology, and organizational development. So it
Wow.
has those pieces, but it's a very practical book. So it's for women who want to learn to cultivate more improved health, happiness, fulfillment, and inner peace. And it has
Mm-hmm.
exercises woven throughout that were
Mm-hmm.
based on a coaching program that I was actually doing virtually with high achieving women. And so I integrated many of the exercises and the coaching questions throughout it. So every chapter as well has that. And there's a
Mm-hmm.
workbook you can also do it. So anyway, my initial thought was for that, those 7 keys to be spread around the world. And so I
Yeah.
also had a back end after I launched, and I made #1, I'm pleased to say, on Amazon on launch day. After I
Wow.
launched, I launched a creative living facilitator program to train
Mm-hmm.
facilitators to integrate those
Mm-hmm.
pieces, and then to identify a particular target group and then teach them that process, and then for them to choose a project in their community dealing with for women and girls, or
Mm-hmm.
to create their own project to make a positive impact related to women and girls in their community. So that I beta tested
Mm-hmm.
in 2013, and now it's on the shelf. And I'm hoping now, with my work with the organization Female Way to Change, that I'll be able to now spread that out, which was my interest, to do it with
Yeah.
women all over the world, because I think these keys and learning to listen to, for example, one's listen to and trust in your body's wisdom, right? Tap
Mm-hmm.
into and express your creative side. Learn from and embrace life transitions, because change is all
Mm-hmm.
around us. So very practical
Yeah.
tools that
Yeah.
people can use regardless of their background and culture.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And when you are talking about these little keys and the points which you are mentioning in your work and your book, uh, I just would like to ask this the last point which you was talking about, embrace the transition, because I feel this is very important in current scenario, whereas we all in globally we are having this pandemic and we are into transition, but how in general people are stressed, right? People are having a lot of anxiety, anxiousness, they are stressed, they are worried, how they can accept or they can get into that transition, how they can embrace this. uh, just if you can explain a little bit. I would not ask more detail. Definitely we would love to read your book, and I would prefer to get that link in the description, but just if you can explain to our audience.
Yes, indeed. It is a very stressful time and has been for many people. It's interesting because several years ago, I developed out of that key in my book, Learn from and Embrace Transitions. I created what's called the Art of Change framework. And it's a
Mm,
5-step art of change process
mm,
based on the metaphor, life is a dance. So it turns change on its head, so you don't fear it,
mm,
for example,
mhm.
and underpinned by the belief that embracing change is a creative process that opens us
Mm,
up to new possibilities. So Shashi, through that art of change framework, which I primarily teach in workshops and I speak about
mhm, mhm,
to groups and organizations, I
mhm.
take people through the process that includes getting into touch with how they typically respond to change
Yeah,
and why. Because
yeah,
people are different. Like Shashi, if I asked you, rate yourself on a scale from 1 to 10 in terms of how you
yeah.
typically respond to change, 1 being scares me to death, 10 being I thrive on it, where would you put yourself,
Mhm.
just in general?
Yeah, that's definitely where when you are talking about this rating, we always feel like, okay, it initially the first thing is make us anxious. At the same time, we feel like, okay, I'm here or there, right? As in myself, I'm thinking. So definitely, if I say like, okay, I'm 5, I'm in the middle of somewhere, or maybe I'm a little bit ahead of somewhere, but the initial thought is coming this anxious or like having this kind of thought. And whereas when you're talking about this uh, you know transition or embracing, and that's definitely wonderful, and I would like to continue and hearing from you, please.
Okay, well, it's interesting because one of it is that, so it's choose your, there's different aspects. I won't go into too much detail, but in terms of
Yeah.
the transition, I think one thing that's really important to mention is I drew heavily on William Bridges' work. Have you heard of
Hmm.
him? He's an
No, I.
organizational theorist who's done a lot of work on life transitions and also transitions
Mm-hmm.
later on in organizations. But what
Mm-hmm.
he discovered is
Yeah.
that he makes a differentiation between a life change and a transition.
Mm.
He says that a life change is something situational and external to us, like something you
Mm.
can see, like a move or a
Mm.
pink slip. We call them pink slips in Canada, you know, when you lose your job, or,
Mm.
you know, a divorce, something very tangible, right?
Mm.
That you can see. And he calls the transition this internal psychological work that we do to
Mm-hmm.
reorient ourselves and readjust to our new external reality. And a
Yeah.
lot of times people do not do the internal psychological work. So what
Mm.
happens is they keep repeating the same patterns in their lives. Hence, people in certain cultures, anyway, marry maybe two, three, four times,
Mm.
and they keep repeating the same issues, and they keep choosing a similar person without taking time between relationships to find out who they are and what they truly want, you know, in the
Mm-hmm.
world. And so part of this is really helping people understand what happens in our bodies when,
Yeah.
and you probably know this, but just for your audience, it might be interesting. Why we respond to fear is we have this amygdala in our brain, right? And it's
Yeah. Yeah.
constantly scanning our environment for
Mm.
threats or things it perceives of threats, things that might be just
Mm-hmm.
different and make it
Mm-hmm.
uncomfortable. And then what
Mm-hmm.
it causes stress hormones to be released throughout our
Mm.
bodies, and they put
Mm-hmm.
us into fight, flight, or freeze. So we get angry with our partner or a kid. You know, fight, flight. We want to run away and hide, or freeze. We like totally can't make any rational decisions. We're just like
Mm.
blocked totally, right? So it's important for people to
Mm-hmm.
understand this. However, if you do a reframe, like it's good to know this, and then when you notice in your body when fear is coming up, you can do things like take deep
Mm-hmm.
breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. And if you do that 3 times, for example, Shashi, that little trick,
Mm.
if you will, releases oxytocin, a hormone that relaxes us, right? So there's
Mm.
tools that I teach people that help them relax. And then if you then change your belief from change is fearful to change is an opportunity to create
Mm-hmm.
something new, right? To experience
Yeah.
something new. I got laid off that job. Well, now maybe I want to start that business I've been wanting to start for years, like the pandemic. People have started new
Mm-hmm.
businesses, right? They've realized, you know, they had some downtime and they got thinking, they thought, you know, I'm not really happy doing this that I want to do. Maybe there's something
Mm.
else I want to do, right? So
Yeah.
there's always a silver lining in change, even though in the moment it doesn't feel like it, right? So part
Mm-hmm.
of that
Yeah.
process is learning. And then if you're part of a team in an organization, walking through this whole process with your team and having
Yeah.
people openly rate themselves, then it's not
Yeah.
about good or bad. If I'm a 9 or a 10, I'm great, and you're a 5, you're not. It's about understanding and then saying,
Yeah.
okay, during change, you may need more support, and tell us how we
Right.
can support you, and let us know
Yeah.
how. Even in a family, let us know how and when we can support you, right? And so
Yeah,
this work
and I
on
think this
change
is
is
this is so important. The points you are bringing on, this platform, how one can embrace this transition by bringing these small example. It is amazing, and it is so crucial. When I'm really happy that we got on this point to talk a little bit about. And but like when we are, I just would like to little bit move ahead about talking about your. Uh, Much more about your leadership. You are such a international consultant, and you have your leadership program and all. So while talking about your this leadership work and all, tell us some story where you feel like yes, it gives you feel of like yes, I've achieved what I was looking for, and maybe changing a one single life, or maybe impacting in a positive way someone's life.
right. I'm just trying to think. Well, there's I think a key lesson
Yeah.
um, is that we're all the same. I'll just share that. I believe because I come from a place, and it may be my early childhood experiences as
Mhm.
well,
Mm-hmm.
You know, Shashi, I'll just share something small if I may. My mother, when I was just a baby, like not
Mm-hmm.
even two, gave me a black doll. Like, you know, who back then gave their children black dolls, right? And so my mother, I feel, was very open. And then when she went back to teaching, she taught elementary school. She would invite the women and men from different cultures to our home to have lunch. So a woman from India with her sari, look, she was very open-minded, right, for her time. And so
Mm-hmm.
anyway, because of that, I think that I really treat everybody the same. And it and in working from that perspective, I think it's helpful. So for example, you know, when you think that regardless of your skin color, regardless of your religion, the language you speak, that we all want to belong, we all want to be loved, we all want to be respected. Most of us
Yeah.
care about family. It's universal. It doesn't matter, right? And so if we imagine if everybody in the world felt like that, we wouldn't have war, right? So for
Mm-hmm.
me to have, I feel blessed that my mother in particular helped inculcate that belief in me, and it served me well in my international work because I'm able to connect with people, you know,
Yeah.
from different countries and cultures. And I find it, I see them as people. I don't see them as a black man or, you know, a Muslim woman or whatever, you know. I mean, I
Yeah.
respect the culture. I mean, I'm going to scarf and I'm going to, you know, dress appropriately, but I really see them as a person from the heart. So again,
Yeah.
you know, and following your heart and leading from your heart. Again, I think, you know, we talked about that. I was going to say the play big. I'll just finish that story, if I may, about playing big. So I jumped
Yeah.
across that line and I said, I want to play big. Within 2 weeks, Shashi, believe this, I got an email offering me to throw my hand into the ring for one of three positions in a high level program in Afghanistan. The
Wow.
Canadian government was supporting the Afghan government, right?
Uh-huh.
And they
Uh-huh.
wanted a health technical advisor in policy and planning. And
Uh-huh.
I looked at this description and and talked to my husband. So then I decided to throw my hat in the ring. So 2 weeks after that, I was part of the interview process. Within 6 weeks after that, a month after that, I was on the ground in Afghanistan. I'd signed a 9-month contract that got extended to 13.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something. I wanted to play big, but I didn't say what. So that happened, and that position brought together so many of my skills. Living on
Mm-hmm.
and working in a war zone for 13 months was
Mm-hmm.
really a challenge, and building the capacity and helping them to create a strategic plan with a
Yeah.
performance measurement framework. That was a big job, and there were great people, and I learned so much from them. So I guess what I'm saying is this business about following your heart. um, I had been doing coaching for, you know, 18 months, and I wasn't having and I had a network of coaches in Canada and the States, and we were coaching people through various life transitions. And yet I
Mm-hmm.
just felt we weren't making a big enough impact fast enough. So I just
Mm-hmm.
really wanted to do some more international work. And this came to me. So it's part of asking, right? And
Yeah.
thinking about it. The line on the floor in my office, Shashi, was an Afghan prayer mat. One of my Pakistani team members had gifted me some years before in Pakistan. And look what came
Wow.
up. Afghanistan. It
Wow.
gives you goosebumps, right?
Wow. Oh, that's really it's really in such a way you bring this story is fascinating and it really give you goosebumps. Thank you, Pam. Thank you for bringing it on this platform. So when we are talking about this, your wonderful experiences and all, just I would like to touch about your this feminine leadership work and what are the most strong, if I say, output or point about your feminine leadership. One can get benefit by looking or maybe working under you or maybe with you.
Yes. Well, I really believe that, you know, authentic feminine leadership holds the key to creating a better world. And of course,
Mhm.
being ambassador for Canada, a female wave of change, and Shashi, you're involved with female wave of change as well. This
Yeah.
organization that does promote authentic feminine leadership and also is aimed at creating a better world. I totally am in alignment with that mission.
Yeah.
And from that perspective, I love to write, and I wrote a blog, I guess in August. It's on my website, and so I write about authentic feminine leadership, and I now have created a not-for-profit in Canada called Female Wave of Change Canada, which is part of the larger global movement,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like through that mechanism, we're going to enable women to not only tap into the global Female Wave of Change Global and their Women Leading in Change program, but
Yeah.
also because of my work in change, my Art of Change framework, the workshops I've
Yeah.
done, the coaching
Yeah.
I've done, I'm now also doing work on becoming a change catalyst, because I work with women to become change catalysts. And part of that
Mm-hmm.
is because if we want to become a catalyst for change, that's someone, it's like, be the change you want to see in the world, like the Dalai Lama. So taking women and taking groups through a process whereby they learn to embrace change, because so I take them through part of the Art of Change framework, and then take
Mm-hmm.
them further and talk about, okay, what does it mean to be a change catalyst? And then
Mm.
focus it down on, what are my passions and what area do I really want to influence? And it could be something small. It could be
Mm.
something in your family. It could be
Mm.
something in your community. Like you want to make a difference. You want to start a nutritious meal program at your children's
Mm-hmm.
school, or you
Mm-hmm.
wanted to create a daycare center,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is, or it's even bigger, right? You want to create something bigger, but it's then, and then helping women then put the pieces together to design whatever that
Yeah.
project is and make it actionable, because I'm all about, helping people dream. That's part of
Yeah.
strategic planning, visioning, and then taking it to the ground. And I also
Mm.
have in my book some fun exercises on discovering your passion. So
Wow.
I include that, and this is a work in progress right now. I have interviewed some women leaders related to
Mm.
uncertainty. So there's a potential stream about leading through uncertainty, and I've written on how do you lean through uncertainty, because it's one thing to have change, but uncertainty is
Yeah.
like this change that seems never ending, like this pandemic, right? A
Right.
lot of
Right.
changes. Somebody dies, you grieve, it's sad, but there's a time frame usually on it, or,
Mm.
but with a pandemic, it's like there's just so much uncertainty, and that's what
Mm.
really causes a lot more stress. So
Mm-hmm.
again, working with me, you can learn how to become this catalyst for change and get clear on your passions, and then
Mm-hmm.
identify a project that you want to take on to make a difference, and gather people around you, because much of
Mm-hmm.
this work that we do as catalyst for change, Shashi, you're
Yeah.
one, is that we can't do it alone. So we
Yeah.
have to learn to
Definitely.
work collaboratively.
Definitely.
So
Yeah.
one of the feminine qualities, I speak about authentic feminine leadership qualities. And yes, they come
Yeah.
from energy. However, I talk about qualities. So
Yeah.
collaboration is an area I have a lot of experience in, because I'm a professional facilitator. And I
Yeah.
started with a business in Canada for 10 and a
Mm-hmm.
half years, where I designed and facilitated multi-stakeholder consensus building processes. And then I
Mm-hmm.
use those in my international work, and I, use them today. So collaboration is what it's all about, because
Yeah.
as Barbara Gray said, an
Mm-hmm.
organizational theorist and negotiator, said many years ago, that it's really important when we have complex issues to
Mm.
have multiple heads around the table.
Mm-hmm.
Because what happens is, she likens actually collaboration and a process of successful collaboration to kaleidoscope. And the
Mm-hmm.
pieces of colored glass and kaleidoscope to be the multiple stakeholders in that
Mm-hmm.
relationship. And when you turn a kaleidoscope, the image always changes. It's a very creative process, right? And so a
Yeah.
well-led collaborative process is like that. And the
Yeah.
whole becomes greater than the sum of the parts.
Mm-hmm.
That's the whole thing. And we need
Yeah.
that to resolve complex issues like systemic
Exactly.
racism and climate change and all these big things, as
Yes.
well as things, bullying and things, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I totally agree with the way you explained that why we need these kind of leadership qualities, why how we can develop, and moreover, how one can look forward if they are looking to be connected with you and to learn some skills. But at the same time, it is definitely, it is wonderful. It feels like I should keep listening you more and more, because it is learning process for me as well. Yeah. Definitely it goes to our audience and our listener, but same time, when we are talking about this, like before finishing this our talk, I just would like to ask if we would talk about this, are all these leadership qualities and feminine leadership, are being authentic and all. What, with your experiences and all, what one message would you like to give to our audience and viewers who can, you know, learn or maybe,
Yes. Yes, it's a difficult one. There's so many, right? To hone it
yes,
down. This is always the challenge, hone it down to one. Okay, I would
yeah,
go with the authentic feminine leadership quality of intuition. It's not been respected for many years. And so I would say to women, really listen to and trust in your body's wisdom and learn how to do that. And because the decisions I've made in my life, Shashi, from doing totally from my left brain, doing the pros and cons list, have not always been the right ones. However, the ones that I've made from going inside, listening to my gut and my heart, have always been the right ones. So I really encourage women to respect and reconnect with, if they haven't, their intuition, and trust that it will always guide them and speak the truth.
beautiful, beautiful. And I believe that's something we all need beyond even talking about this feminine and masculine, because in current scenario, in current world, people are understanding, people are listening, people, and in we talk about this global leadership, people are understanding how important to talk about and to bring those authentic feminine leadership in their work, whether we are talking about male or female, but bringing those aspects is so important in their life, in their work, or wherever they are. Thank you, thanks you. And once again, I really feel like, yes, it is something I also want to firmly believe on that. Before finishing, just one more last thing I would like to ask. Why do you think a platform like this Women Dialogue is needed?
Shaji, first of all, thank you for all the great questions. You're a wonderful interviewer. You asked some wonderful, really good questions. And I think this platform is needed because sharing women's voices and highlighting women, showcasing, if you will, women from different cultures, disciplines, and backgrounds, I think can, as you said, inspire other women in terms of learning from others about the journey, their leadership journeys, in terms of exposing them to different, opportunities and careers, and also bridging the gap and making them feel that they're not alone in their journey. They may have some struggles going on, and then they can realize they're not alone, right? Like women all around the world, we all, and men too, all face challenges, and it's how we deal with the challenges that, makes all the difference, right? And also the opportunity to learn and grow from each other, because that's what we do when we share our voices, right? If we're open, we learn and grow, because that's what life's about. It's always about learning and growing.
Thank you. Once again, thank you so much. It was such a great pleasure to hear from you, all your beautiful thoughts, your wisdom, your experiences. And it made me feel like, yes, I should keep listening, but we have little time constraint. But just before finishing, I would like to ask how are, if audience and, listeners, if they are interested, how they can get your book. Is it available on Amazon or somewhere, or?
Yes, yes. Thanks for asking, Shashi. It is. It's available on Amazon. And if people have some questions, they can email me at
Yeah, I will put
Pam.
your details in the
Put that
description
in,
as
eh?
well. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, yes, it is on Amazon in
Thank
Kindle
you.
and also in paperback.
Wonderful, wonderful. And once again, thank you, Pamela. I always say Pam, but thank you once again, Pam, for this beautiful sharing your wisdom, your knowledge, and uh, beautifully answering and our audience queries or maybe their curiosity. I really appreciate your efforts and your time. Thank you once again. Thank you. And thanks to all viewers. If you would like to hear more women voices and part of Women Dialogues, please connect with us. And once again, thank you. See you in the next episode. And don't forget to check the PAM's work in the description below as well. See you next time. Till then, take care and bye bye.